Welcome back. We are starting to play with the SVG rendering. It's not very exciting yet, but it will get to be that way very shortly. So I want to show you one of my favorite features about LiveView. Oh, by the way, I've tweaked the dev EXS a little bit. I find that sometimes when I make these explicit, the live reload works better for me. So I've said that I put views in one place and live in another place, and it seems to be working better now. So now, to give you an idea for how that works, I can just delete that code and we'll see that now I don't have that ASCII chunk in the rendering anymore. So one of the things that I love about LiveView is that it lets me work in two headspaces. The first headspace that's really cool is I can just work right directly with the HTML and how the data impacts the HTML. So for example, I might have for like a series of 3 tuples like this. Let's do maybe orange. And let's say that we have one of those I characters. And just to make it pretty so that we can see what's going on in our code base, let's say we're going 1 1 2 1 3 1 and 4 1. Let's see if that works for us. So now our tetromino is showing like this, and we want to render that. We want to render all of them. So rather than render raw box, what I really want to say is raw tetromino, but let's go ahead and say raw boxes, right? And so we're going to take a list of boxes, and we're going to put that list in the tetromino. That's good. I don't really like this name anymore. Am I going to change that? I think I'm going to leave that. I'm going to leave that alone for now. This name, this is going to be more useful than just coding the tetromino, which is 4 points. And so it won't be accurate forever, but it's accurate now. So we'll go ahead and leave it alone. So let's write our boxes. It's going to be amazingly simple. And this is going to take points now. Actually, it's not just points, it's points with colors. So what we can do now is we could say enum.map, and we're going to take the points with colors. And then we're going to basically, and since this is going to be a pretty involved function, let's go ahead and pipe that in. I know some people might not want to do it that way, but this is going to let me simplify this line of code right here, which is pretty important to me. So I'm going to say function, and that's going to be an X, a Y, and a color. And I'll go ahead and close that on the same line. I think that that'll be pleasing. And then we're going to do some work in here. But when we're done with this, we're going to pipe that all into enum.join. And maybe we'll keep the HTML pretty. So maybe we'll join that on a new line. And I think we'll like that if we do. Well, no, maybe we'll just do an enum.join because these are going to be, it'll be pretty short. No, I'm going back to my original statement, right? So what we're joining is 2 of these, a rectangle and a square and a triangle for each of these things. So they are going to be pretty involved. But this is surprisingly easy. We're basically going to render a box. And the box, we're going to take an X and a Y and a color like that. So let's see what this looks like. Yeah, now we have a row of boxes, and that's exactly what we want. And I think it would be interesting now to pull this much from our tetramino. So right now, let's go ahead and roll with the features that we have in our Tetris block and Tetris points. Eventually, we're going to want to clean that API up. And the way to do that is to group together all the functions that we're going to need for the ground and all the functions that we're going to need for a brick and all the features that work on both. And we're going to call those. And that's going to be complete with the external API for the whole, for all of this. We'll have a convenient version of each. But we'll go ahead and start to work with these in the live view to kind of get a sense for what we need. So I think that maybe one of the things that we have to do is establish a new game, right? So we're going to say new. So we're going to say, we're going to take a socket and we're going to pipe this whole thing. So we'll say new game, and that's going to take a socket. So now we have to write. So there's our mount. So this is going to break as soon as we save it. But what we'd like to do here is establish what a new game is. And I like to leave my render relatively close to the top. So right below this area, I'm going to process the new game. That's going to take a socket. And so the socket, the thing that we're using from the socket is the tetramino right here. So we're going to need a new brick at some point, but we're going to need some other things as well. So I think that what we're going to do is we're going to take a socket. And then we'll say have a key. So maybe a game state. I don't need to call this the game state. It's just this is a game, so we can call the state. And we'll initially say this is playing. Eventually, we're going to want to have our views established based on which state we're in. But right now, the only state that we're going to support is playing. And I'm going to go ahead and say the score is 0. I might have a couple of other things in there, but I think that that's going to go ahead and get me started. And then I'm going to pipe this whole thing to new. Yeah. A new block, right? And the reason that I'm going to do this is that the new block, I'm going to want a separate new block line for when each block reaches the bottom. So the new block is going to look like this. That's going to take a socket. And so we're eventually going to do it in assign, but let's go ahead and grab some things we need. So we need a brick. And so maybe this is a good time to alias. Actually, I'm not going to alias this yet, and I'll tell you why. Eventually, our whole API is going to be in Tetris. But right now, we're going to go ahead and burn through to the brick to get the things that we want. Do random. And so we're going to create a new random brick. And this is a little bit, so we need to consider the context. So now we're saying that our playing field is about what is it, 10 wide, so 10 by 20. So if we look at the SVG pieces, yeah, so 10 by 20 because we're 20 high and 20 tall. And I think that might be official Tetris. We might want to bump that up to 24 just to give us some room to scramble at the top a little bit before something falls into play, before a brick falls into play. So let's go ahead and do a map.put, and then we're going to put location, and we're going to make that location initially. It's going to be about 4. So what is it? So we're adding to 4. So let's say let's put it at 3. So this would be 3. So 4, 5, 6, 7. So there will be 2 on the left and 3 on the right. So that sounds pretty good to me. And we'll put it right on the top row. And so there's our brick. And then our points. And remember, we had this prepare function. It's been a while since we coded this, so let's go ahead and open up our Tetris, right? So this is our Poncho app, which means that it's a full application, but it's at the root of our directory. We did a mix Phoenix new. And we have this brick API, and we're going to need a couple of things out of it. But remember, we had this prepare thing that we used to get everything ready for our print. So let's see. Yeah, there's a prepare. So it basically took a brick and it took a shape. And remember, the shape converted everything to the points. And then we did a brick rotation and we did a mirror. And rather than just putting, well, let's go ahead and use that prepare. So this should put everything in the correct orientation. We won't have a color yet. So we're going to need a color API also. Did we create a color API? So, so we had a with color. Yeah, that's what we did. So since a color is a user interface issue, let's not worry quite about that yet. We definitely won't worry back in Tetris. But let's say that we have this. So we have our Tetris piece, and we want to prepare this thing. So the points come from the Tetris .prepare, and that's going to take a brick. Okay. So now we can basically do our assigns. And so we can assign socket, and then we're going to put the tetromino is going to be the points .width color. No, I need to pipe that into. So I also need to take this. This needs to be a pipeline, doesn't it? So we got a Tetris brick.prepare. We're going to start this with a brick. And so now I can say, yeah, I think I had this with color API. So I could hard code that, and let's see how what the with color API looked like. So this is the points API, and you can see this that we added this add color. So this with color, and so that's points and a color. And the color, we don't specify anything about that. So the nice thing about the implementation that we have is we can drop that into our view with no problem. It's not a bad place to put those kinds of details. So let's have a, we have the shades there, colors. And let's say, so I could take a brick, if the name is T, maybe that's going to be a red. And so we need a bunch of these, right? And we need them for all those colors. Okay, so if it's a T, we're going to do a red. If it's an I, we're going to do a blue. What's left? We have an L, and that could be a green. And we have an O, and that could be orange. and a gray. And so the gray is the last color, and what are we missing? So there's I, L, so those are the tall ones. There's a Z, isn't there? And these are actually all symbols. So that's not colors, this is a single color, isn't it? That's a better name. So now we can, we can get a color, and this could be, so the color, this could be the color of the brick. Right? I think I like that. Okay. Points is with color, and then I had the points. The points is, and then the color. Actually, I've already added that. So we're good there. So now I have a tetromino, and let's go ahead and store the brick also. And the brick is going to be so I'm not quite happy with this. I'll tell you why in a second, but the brick is going to be a brick. So I think that what should happen is we should have a we should break these into two different functions. This is going to happen quite often, right? Where we prepare it and then we add the color. That's going to happen every time that we shift the brick on the screen. And actually, we're going to have to move that to the location also. But we'll go ahead and save that refactor for another time. So let's see where we are here with our piece. So we have an undefined function socket, and that is coming at line 41. That's great. So new block, and that takes there's my misspelling. So let's see how we look. Okay, yeah, so there's one. It looks like these are picking up a color, which is great, and they're rendering with every reload. That's great. So this is a great time to stop and take stock. Maybe we'll do a little bit of tweaking to the API. So one of the things that I'm worried about, or not worried about, one of the things that I think that we could optimize is we could break this down. This is a little bit too complex. So our new block should have some of these features, but the move, which actually establishes this thing, that can go elsewhere. So maybe I create the brick there, and maybe this can go in. I'll show the brick here. So this means assign the brick, and this means establish the tetrominos that we want to show. So this is going to take a socket also. And this is basically going to do an assign also. Okay, so I'm going to assign socket, and I'm going to assign tetromino, and that is going to be points. So I think that now we can say, yeah, new games, new block, and then show. I think I like that. And the brick has to be socket So I could go ahead and extract it there, but I think this is just fine right there. And so this looks like everything is working just like it's supposed to. I think I'm happy with that. So this is a great place to stop. And what we'll try to do next time is tidy up our API a little bit. But I think that it's time to actually put these blocks into motion, where we've started to focus on looking at at render as a function and basically push some data through that function and change the data and then extend the capabilities of the functions that we're making to render everything. And then after we have a good head start with that piece, then the nice thing is that we can shift gears and then work on some of the things that can change the data. So the two things that I'd like to work on next are the keystrokes that'll spin the block around, and also allowing the each new brick to fall as we click the timer. So that's what we will work on next time. It's a great place to stop and take stock.